Hi there, radio survivors. Paul here. And on this video, I'm going to talk about something that's audio related, but not necessarily specifically radio related. And it's actually something I've written about at Radio Survivor before, and that's turntables or record players. And one of the big ironies, I think, of the resurgence in vinyl and popularity of vinyl in the last decade or so has been the fact that so many of the record players out there are cheap, plastic, and they sound terrible, and they're really hard on your records. In fact, they're just versions of the record players from the 80s, really, that gave records a bad reputation to begin with. Why everyone was so hot to move to CDs in the late 80s and early 90s is because they mostly had these cheap plastic turntables. But I can understand not everyone has hundreds and thousands of dollars to spend. And I myself, I have a very nice turntable in my main listening room, my living room, but I kind of wanted to have a record player for my office or something I could take around. But most of the portable turntables out there, record players, kind of suck. Again, they're plastic and they use what's called a ceramic cartridge, which tracks at a really heavy weight and it's hard on your records. You know, you're not going to destroy your record with one or two plays, but after a while, those $25 records you bought aren't going to be worth nearly as much. They're not going to sound as good. And I kind of always don't understand the point of playing a $25 brand new record on a turntable that maybe only costs twice as much. But looking for a portable record player then, you know, I kind of found one that maybe out of the box isn't brilliant, but I learned I could make it better. So what I have here is the Numark PT01USB record player. And it's actually one that I've seen in radio stations before. I've seen them set up in like a lounge area or in like a small listening area so that DJs could go and preview records if they didn't have other turntables lying around, or maybe it was like a spare. So I've seen this used before. And this is designed for DJs, in fact, but not necessarily for them to use to play records on at a gig or a show, but because it's nice and small and it can be battery operated, for them to take out when they go crate digging, when they go looking for records. And so if they find something they've never seen before, especially at like a used record sale or at a garage sale or an auction or something, they can quickly take out the record, plop it on here, and give it a listen and find out what exactly it is, what it sounds like. But because of its popularity with DJs, it's kind of become more used for actual DJing, where DJs are turning it into a DJ turntable. And it's this whole subcommunity called portablism. The idea that you can have a couple of these Numark PT01s, a little mixer, and actually go out and spin and actually do a lot of scratching and stuff. But to really do it well, you kind of have to replace some parts. And even though I'm not going to DJ really, I'm not going to do any scratching, I saw that most of these parts would just make this a better record player. It would make it easier on my vinyl and also make it sound better. So I took it on as a project to take this record player, which normally costs maybe about $100, invest a little bit in parts and turn it into a really nice record player that also is a nice little case. You can pick up and you bring it places. It's battery powered, has USB, you can plug it into your computer. So that's in fact what I did. And the big thing what you want to do is you want to be able to upgrade your cartridge. Cartridge is the thing that holds the stylus, people often call the needle. And what comes standard on these is something called a ceramic cartridge. They've been around a very long time. They're dead simple, and that's why they get used. They're also super cheap. Literally $1 is what you can buy them at for wholesale. But they require a lot of weight in order to play properly. 5 grams of weight is really what it takes. And these days, that's really heavy. And it puts a lot of wear and tear on your records. More ideal, especially for more hi-fi turntables, is something around 1.5 or 2 grams, less than half as much weight. However, it's not just as simple of just swapping out your cartridges, because the nice thing about a ceramic cartridge from the standpoint of making a cheap record player is the fact that it doesn't require any preamplification. So it can just be put right into an amplifier and you'll hear the signal pretty well. That's part of why its track's so heavy, is to be able to turn those physical impulses into electrical signals. If you want to get a nicer cartridge, one that would be on your typical home record player or turntable, even a relatively inexpensive one, it's called a moving magnet cartridge, you have to have a preamplifier. Now I could have just done that, but the other part of it is that, you know, it's got this plastic tone arm. And the idea of kind of trying to take apart that relatively delicate piece of plastic and put in a nicer cartridge seemed a little daunting to me. So then I found out about companies making aftermarket tone arms. And I found one by this company called Bihari, which is actually in Hungary. And this is what I put on here, is a Bihari tone arm. And it's made specifically to take an aftermarket cartridge. In this particular case, often people put on what's called a Shure 44/7 cartridge. It's made for DJs. But I thought, well, can I put on more of a hi-fi cartridge? So I went and got a Ortofon Omega. And this is not a very expensive cartridge. So I mentioned that sort of like the ceramic cartridges cost maybe a dollar wholesale, maybe a few dollars on eBay or Amazon. This one here costs about $35, and it's about the entry level for a decent little hi-fi cartridge. This is something you would put on a home turntable. It's actually a little bit nicer than some of the less expensive turntables that cost like $200. So I went ahead and got that, and I put on this Bihari tone arm. And the tone arm is made out of aluminum rather than plastic, and I mostly decided that was nice because it's good and sturdy, right? And it's got some mass to it, and it's also got a counterweight on it. And what's nice about that is that it means that instead of there being a little spring often which forces the needle down, this is properly counterweighted. And if you've seen your typical sort of turntable, you'll often see that there's a counterweight on the end that you can adjust. And it's because you don't want to track with too much weight. And this cartridge is rated for about 1.5 to 2 grams. That's how much force is down on the record. And I've got this at about 2 grams. Just stock right out of the box, this Bihari tone arm. And then though, as I mentioned, you need to have a preamplifier. And I could have just gone with this, but it would mean that you wouldn't get any signal out of the built-in speaker. And mind you, the built-in speaker isn't great, right? This is just a little tiny speaker. Many Bluetooth speakers would put this to shame. But still, if I want to take this in the backyard, take it somewhere else, and not plug it into speakers, I want to be able to amplify this signal. And so Bihari actually makes a little preamplifier that you plug in inside, that you open up and you put it in. And again, I didn't really think about making this video until after I'd done this whole process, so I can't quite show you, but I'll find some shots of it from the Bihari website so you can see how you put in this little preamplifier and that amplifies the signal so that it sounds good. It sounds full, it sounds rich, it's got enough volume to drive external speakers and the internal speakers. Now that's all interesting, but the question, of course, does it work? And luckily, the answer is yes. Now, I've recorded this audio that you're hearing from the record player actually through the USB connection. That's part of the Numark PT01USB, is that it's got a USB connection to plug it into your computer. That means you can, record your vinyl directly in. Sometimes people call them vinyl archiving turntables, although, let's face it, no real archivist is going to use this to archive their vinyl, especially not with a 5-gram tracking ceramic cartridge that is going to put more wear and tear on your records than necessary. But it's a nice little feature, and it sounds pretty good, as you can hear on this video. By the way, this record is called Pretty Girls, and it's by a band called The Runs, and the drummer is a good friend of mine, and he gave me this record, and I thought it also may be one that won't get flagged for copyright violations on YouTube for the little clips that we're playing here so I can show it off. And in the end, it's turned out pretty well. Now, of course, you say, well, so it was a $100 turntable, a $100 record player. How much did you have to invest? And the answer is almost $100 by the time it was all over. But the simple fact is the matter is you can't actually go out on Amazon or eBay or anything today and find a portable record player for $200 even, brand new at the very least, that's going to be as good and going to play as well. Because the nice thing about this record player is, even though it's stock with that ceramic cartridge and it's mostly plastic, it's got, you know, some nice metal to it. It's pretty nicely built, and the overall fit and finish and quality control is better than most of the plastic turntables I've seen when I've gone into various stores. Most of the Crosleys and Victrolas is a brand that's come back and such. They're pretty chintzy, and the quality control is all over the place. You just kind of never know whether the record player you're going to get is spinning at the right speed and isn't like all wobbly. And this is pretty good. And in fact, I mean, it has a pitch control here, and at center I measured it, and it's very, very close to 33 1/3 RPM. So close enough for my purposes. You barely notice any speed difference at all. And if it were a little off, I'd be able to change it, which is kind of nice. So, of course, it was a little experiment, a little project for me just to see if it could be done. And I'm really, really happy about it. So look in the show notes there, and we'll have some links to where you can buy these Bihari Designs tone arms and preamps. There's a company in the US that sells them, or you can order them direct from Hungary. And let me know what you think. Are you going to try and make your own higher end, shall we say, record player? Or are you just going to go and scan eBay and go through the thrift stores looking for an old school one that might actually be better than what's on the shelves at Target or Urban Outfitters? That's it for now. Thanks for watching.